Would you like to join us at in the comfy chairs?
Good.
We got, are you sure? All right. All right. All right. Gotta be in the sun if you do. Yeah, we might ask you to join the committee if you're not careful. High risk position.
Okay. Okay, I believe we're streaming, so
Page two.
Hey.
This is me as well.
Go on in, Eric. Oh,
You know what this is?
here we go. Well, welcome to the May 28th meeting of the Scarborough Housing Alliance. We call the order at 6:05 p.m. Thank you everybody for coming. Um, thank you for joining us, Eric.
Pleasure.
All right. And that takes us through item one. I'll ask you to maybe silently in your head and keyboard do number two, which is those present. Um, and looks like we've got one just at the table. We've got a Debbie Gates present virtually and a Tracy. Is that you, Karen? No. All right. We've got a guest named Tracy who's also present. And Richard Hayes also present.
would you mind just checking in with them, make sure they're hearing everything correctly?
Sure. Let's see. Debbie and Tracy, I don't know if there's a way for you to tell us that you can hear us, but oh yeah, there we go. Could you raise your hand somehow if you can hear us?
We don't see a picture of them, do we?
No. All right, great. They can hear us.
Excellent.
Super. Well, welcome to the meeting. As Eric's doing those present, we've got item 3 on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes from April 30th.
So moved.
All right, we've got a motion to approve them. I have noticed that there's a note about who our guests were. And I don't think the names are right of who they are, but I don't know who the people were. I think I have a note that one of them was named Allison. Maybe
Yes,
Allison
Allison Bristol.
That's what I thought I wrote. Yeah.
It says guests were Marvin Gates and Debbie Gates.
Oh, there should be other guests. Because it was Steve Hanley and Allison Bristol. Did that get removed?
Yeah, it says guests by Zoom, Marvin Gates and Debbie Gates. Oh wait, yeah, sorry. It says guests at town hall. Okay, all right. We have Marvin Gates, Debbie Gates by Zoom. Okay, great. So no suggested comments by me. Is there any other discussion about the minutes? Other than a note that we had a great number of guests, an all-time high, maybe. And that's great. So is there a motion to or a second to approve? Second. Great, did you get that? All right, all in favor?
I.
All right, they are unanimously approved. The fourth item on our agenda is a follow-up from our last meeting, which is a discussion and action item on the Marshview Terrace grant application. Scarborough Housing Alliance has a role to play to recommend to town council fundings from the Housing Trust Fund that town council manages. We've been presented with a proposal from South Portland Housing Authority to for a $200,000 grant funding for the I guess you call it a senior housing portion. I don't want to call it elderly housing anymore, but a 50-unit project, and we've got a guest, Ben Mahoney, to talk to us about the Marshview Terrace grant application. And Ben, if you could kick it off and talk to us about what I think is just to follow on to the senior portion of
Yes.
your grant.
Yeah, if I can get contributor,
Sure.
then I can share my screen with the whole group.
Okay, you don't have access?
I.
Oh, I bet I need to make you a panelist. Hold on.
Yeah,
I'm in. I'm in.
Welcome, Jean Marie.
Okay, just asking you to unmute there.
oh, sorry. Staying muted.
And you should be able to share as panelist.
It's not an option yet.
Okay.
Still showing as guest on the screen. So, for a lot of people here, this should be a lot of similar stuff talked about in the past. I'm gonna go through everything again, just because I know there's a couple people on the Zoom. Not sure if Richard was here before or other guests. So sorry, it's gonna be a little repetitive, but I think I'm gonna keep it just to this presentation for this and the tip conversation afterwards. So we can at least, we're saving some time, right?
Yeah, and Ben, I just will ask, we've got two separate actions for this meeting. One relates to the grant app, one relates to a CEA request.
Yes.
And I do remember last meeting, you talked about two grant applications for two different projects. This is just for one of them, so I'll ask that you keep it just to that one.
Okay,
All right.
sounds good. All right, so for everybody, who we are, this is coming from South Portland Housing Development Corporation and South Portland Housing Authority. South Portland Housing Development Corporation is a nonprofit 501c3. We are the affiliate nonprofit developer wing of the Housing Authority in South Portland. There's some clarity to be made there. As the nonprofit developer, we are able to develop in other municipalities. As most nonprofits are, we can work nationally or internationally to the benefit of our communities around us. South Portland Housing Authority, South Portland Housing Development Corp. Currently owns and develops within South Portland, Scarborough, and Biddeford, either as the primary developer or as a consultant. Kind of a multitude of sources or resources to different communities. A lot of times you'll see us working in communities that don't have their own housing authorities, or those with smaller housing authorities that don't have the capacity to develop their own properties. Currently, we have 52 properties that makes up almost 800 apartments. Some of those are even single family, some are commercial spaces. Some are larger multi-unit buildings of over 123 units for seniors. And we currently have another 95 apartments under construction, and more in the pipeline like this project. Some of the photos you can see here are from some of our projects and some ribbon cuttings. Even the top and bottom photos are of Jocelyn Place, one of the properties here in Scarborough. Just showing a few of the photos of some of our other properties. Blue building seen in two of the photos is Jocelyn Place. That's our here in Scarborough. That is a 60-unit building. That is a passive house building, so it's extremely energy efficient. It is 60 units, same demographic as what we're proposing here. People 55 and up, making 60% of the area median income or less. And these are all going to be one-bedroom apartments. And it's good to note that the residents in here would not have children also in the housing with them, so this would not impact schools. And this is just for single individuals or couples. The other property shown is just another example. This is another type. This is a 4-story building right up on Main Street in South Portland. It has commercial space on the ground floor and then family housing on the 3 floors. So a good kind of example of a building that's a similar height to what we're proposing. This one's actually a little taller than what we're proposing. And it's a good demonstration of a building that's along a road, similar to US Route 1. To note, this building is actually, I believe, 12 feet from the road, whereas the building we're proposing will be over 50 feet from the road. So I'll now start to talk a little bit about the site location for this proposal. So 578 US Route 1 is where I have labeled in a star. Running from north to south along the page is US Route 1. Just at the top right, you can see the edge of Scarborough Marsh. Then between us and the marsh is Maine DOT down at the south with kind of that large paved area just below and to the right of the star. And then there's also someone closer to the marsh to our right directly, which I believe is a physical therapy office and health clinic. And then behind us is some residential units. Currently, there is several businesses running in the area across the street. It is already affordable housing. There's a supermarket catty corner to this site. There is a Walgreens less than half a mile away, a credit union less than half a mile away, several restaurants. So there's a lot of businesses already within walking distance of this site. So just kind of talking into why this is a good site for this project. And the type of infrastructure that's already here that would benefit from this site and all these new residents nearby that potentially wouldn't have to take a car. And how these perks or amenities of the existing businesses can benefit the tenants that will be there. I think one thing to note, just come up a lot, is traffic, right in, right out. A lot of the businesses seen even in this picture are right in, right out on US Route 1. It's a common feature of a lot of sites on US Route 1. The credit union I mentioned is right where my cursor is. That's a right in, right out. Across the street, there's a business right here that's right in, right out only. The housing across the street from us is right in, right out only. I think one of the particular constraints of this site is that we are near the marsh. So when right in, right out means you cross it. That's been a very talked about topic here. If you were to plug in a route leaving this site, crossing the marsh takes just over 1 minute. It's 1 mile to cross the marsh. So when we're talking about impacts on commuters and people leaving and wanting to go in different directions, we're talking about a 3-minute potential detour to have to go southbound. And in terms of driving around Scarborough, it's a relatively small impact on someone's regular route. And just to dive into that a little deeper, the current trip counts that we're projecting for this site are drastically reduced than what the site's current use is, and significantly less than what we had initially proposed of the 96 units. Currently, our site plan application indicates 13 trips during our peak traffic, which is like our high traffic times near rush hour. Another really critical detail to that is where people are going when they leave the site. Statistics indicate that tenants, when leaving to go to work, will likely be heading north, which is the right out, and then becoming southbound at the end of the day. And the southbound route shown on this map, because there is not a left in and there's not a U-turn allowed at the intersection here, they will likely be the best route would be to take a right near Ann Johns, come down Payne Road at the lit intersection, and then make your left in. This route here, it adds 2 minutes to your commute. So does it make a difference to a commute? Absolutely. Is it a major change in time from maybe a commute from South Portland or Portland? We're talking about like maybe a 10% additional amount of time in your car. And I think for the other benefits that a resident would receive by living here, the community that they'd be getting, the other places they wouldn't have to drive to because things are close, more than makes up for that 2 minutes potentially of driving. And we have to remember also that a lot of these tenants are not commuting to work. They're over 55, they're retired, they're nearly retired, maybe working part-time. So again, it's only talking about 13 people during peak rush hour traffic. So now we'll dive in a little bit to the site deeper. Currently, it's divided into 3 zones. There are wetlands on the site. There's a stream on the site. There's currently 1.84 acres developed. So that is, if you look at this map of the site here, all near the road is currently paved areas and the existing Marshview restaurant turned into the Marshview Flea Market. As the site sits, you can see just barely a lot of the striping for parking. We did a recent count. This adds up to actually to 56 parking spaces. Even the way the site lies now in a very poor parking configuration, you could fit a lot more just by restriping it. And so our proposal is 55 parking spaces for these tenants. So we're also talking about reduced parking from its existing condition. So diving in a little bit more to the site now. And the reason I touch on what the site is now, because I want to talk about, as we talk about this grant, the TIF, we're talking about using public dollars to help support this project. And this project is, we like to think of this project as benefiting the public as well. And so it's a trade-off between the community and this housing project. So to highlight this existing site, where there's currently a building there that is well past its useful life. This building has severe leaks all over, outdated electrical systems, poor structure, several windows broken out. Sadly, there's essentially no historical value left to the site because of all of the retrofits and redesigns that have happened over its lifetime. Something that we looked at initially while purchasing the property, and through the research we had done, there's just nothing left to be saved, sadly. Even in recent conversations with the fire department, they had concerns even with leaving the power on with it. But working with code enforcement and the fire department, we determined that it's best to keep it on so that we can keep it monitored and safe until something is done with this property. But what I think this speaks to the most is that something needs to be done here with this site. Otherwise, it becomes a potential hazard sooner than later. Other items here, we are talking about a lot of curb cuts along US Route 1. So that's entrances and exits. That creates irregular traffic patterns when people can be darting in and out of US Route 1 in unexpected ways. That creates a lot of accidents. So 92 feet, and we're looking to cut that down drastically. Then another item here is that currently, because of the age of the site, there was never anything done for stormwater management. So we have 1.8 acres here that is completely untreated water going down into the creek and then into the Marth. So again, this is something that needs to be improved, not just for the site, but for the community. So here's just some more photos. I think this does a really good job of highlighting how much is clear cut right now and paved on the site. And to the right, you have a photo of standing at the edge of the property, and you can see clearly where people are having to walk and where there is currently no sidewalk. And that is something that we plan to address. There's also no buttons to get people across this US Route 1 here. And so it kind of speaks to all the improvements that we intend to make to US Route 1 to make this a safer place for drivers and pedestrians. So now we can jump into the project itself a little bit. So what we're proposing is a 4-story building that's under 45 feet tall. Current zoning is for a 45-foot in maximum height building. So we're planning to keep the building height under that. Reducing the curb cuts from 92 feet to 24 feet. So it'll be just this single right in, right out. We'll be down to 55 parking spaces. We'll still have the loop trail that we had initially proposed for tenants to be able to utilize some of that forested area behind the site. We'll have no impact on the wetlands, so preserving all their wetlands. And we have several improvements done to US Route 1 proposed. Some are needed for the site if we're going to be putting a new building on. Some are future proofing, and some are just getting ahead of future issues. When we talk about US Route 1, this is something that has been talked about at great lengths with our own engineers that we've hired to work on this project and the city's own consultants. And on top of that, Maine Department of Transportation. They've been a part of the conversation since the site was available for sale, because we always knew that right in, right out was going to be an issue. Also, as it sits now, the site is not right in, right out. You can currently exit the site, cross US Route 1 and turn left. That was not brought up in our past presentations, but if you type in Google a route to this project, it says you can turn left into it. There's no raised median in front of it at a portion of the curb cut. And it's quite possible to turn left into the site or exit the site and turn left and head south. The reason we've gone to a right in, right out is because we've worked with the town's engineers and Maine Department of Transportation, and they've recommended that the safest route is right in, right out. And so that's what has driven this design the way it is. So it was an option, but the experts have said that's not the safest option. And so these are the constraints of the site. The owners to the south and Maine DOT to the left, to the north. When talking with that Maine DOT, the conversation, essentially it was determined that even if we had access to Doloff Way, it would not be a viable left turn location. It would still be too close to an existing intersection, so it still would not be a safe option for tenants to turn left. And unfortunately, we're not able to work with the property to the south. We spent over 6 months in negotiations with them trying to acquire access for the property so that tenants could use that lit intersection. But essentially what we're faced with is a property with these constraints, and we've done everything we can to address those constraints.
Is your plan showing a median being put on Route 1?
So there is currently a median shown right here that is existing. And we are looking to extend that median as a part of our improvements to make it more difficult for a potential resident or delivery driver to make a quick U-turn once they exit the site. Essentially, they'll have to get out on the US Route 1 and get moving because of traffic in the area, and then the length that they'll have to drive down US Route 1 then discourages them from actually making the U-turn. And that was in collaboration with Maine DOT to add that. You'll also see like other locations like across the street. We'll use the wishbone raised area in the center here to discourage left turns from the southbound lane. But that wasn't necessary because of the amount of raised median we already had here.
With this reduced project, did the workforce housing piece carry a lot of the ins and outs numbers, or was it pretty evenly between?
There was significantly more from the workforce. So when we did our initial proposal, the peak trip hours, I believe, was 36 peak trip hours. And now we're down to 13. So
I thought that it's a dramatically less risky proposition.
Yeah, and it is significantly less peak trips. One thing that I want to continue to highlight is the existing site. If a retailer was to fill that retail space of that size, you could potentially see, this is not all retail spaces, but some retailers would generate over 55 peak trip hours. So depending on the business or potential private developer that was to move into this location, they could be generating even more than what we had initially proposed by right, with a new roof, new electrical work, and restriping their pavement. So I think that's one of the things that as the town continues to talk about this project is you need to contend with what else could end up here with less community involvement or oversight and input. And we're here to be a part of that conversation and be a part of the community. And that's why we've continued to work with everybody and be here at the table. All right. So keep going.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too in the weeds on some things, but there's been so many questions
Yeah.
raised over time, and I want to try and cover as much as I can. So we'll dive a little more deeper into the housing itself. We're talking about fifth units, 1-bedroom villas, no children or impact on schools. So significantly less tax burden on the city. Funding will be through federal low-income housing tax credits. Those are federal funds, not state or local taxes. Then through the Federal Home Loan Bank, that's a grant and subsidized loan. The project will have a community room, rooftop solar, EV charging stations, all to the requirements of the city's code. We'll have resident service staff, maintenance on site. It's a very efficient building, being passive house design. And one of the items that I saw floating around recently was about the low income affordability restrictions. And this building will have a 45-year minimum restriction to low-income housing. And what's important to note is that that is the requirement by the funding. That's not, that's a requirement to the funding, and in addition to that, we as the owner and developer do not intend on ever changing that either. And so we own buildings that have been in the 70s, and we've been a nonprofit or housing authority since the 40s, and we are not in the market of building for buildings and then going to market value or for profit at the end of those coverage restrictions. We usually renew them and restore our buildings and keep them affordable. So yes, there's a 45-year requirement. We have never gone above and beyond. We have never not gone above and beyond.
This project, it sounds very similar to Jocelyn Place in terms of the way you're going to set it up and run it.
Exactly, yes.
You've now got some experience with Jocelyn Place. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience has been?
Yeah, it was I mean, I think on the overall it's been a great experience. I think through the pre-development process, working with the neighbors there, working with the town staff, working with council, working with planning. Um, it was a very um, it was a successful project, and there were a lot of conversations with that project. There were negotiations, there were some give and take, and at the end of the day, we have a great 60-unit housing building in Scarborough. And we had the fire department visit it recently. They did a walkthrough and they did a bunch of safety training for our residents. And they then applauded our maintenance staff on how we were one of the best plowed and safest buildings through the winter time. There we have a special access, fire lane access that is similar to what we're proposing at this building. And they said they never see them plowed the way they're supposed to be, and they were actually really happy about how our building was being run. And it's the same staff that'll be working there. We've worked with the fire department to design this building and place it on the site. So that same kind of network, and we've worked with the next door neighbors on the colors of the building because they were going to see it in their backyards. And we're here to help people and to make something nice that everyone will enjoy.
Thank you. That's encouraging.
Ben, this part of the talk is about, the funding from us, or not from us, but from the Housing Trust Fund. One of the things that people care about is, and you just touched on it, but it's how can we ensure that this will be affordable to people for a while, right? A long time. And then the other thing that people care about is how can we make sure that this will be well maintained and well run and financially viable for a long time, right? So it's one thing to be affordable, but if that comes at the expense of being well maintained 5, 10, 15 years down the road, then that's not great. So can you touch on that and how we can be, assured that this will be a stable, physically, but also financially stable project in our community?
Yeah, great question. So I think that the easiest way to think of these projects is it's a major partnership. It's between us, the community, Maine Housing is our big partner, and they are the state's housing authority. They bring the federal low-income housing tax credits. Those tax credits also come with outside private investors. We also have funds from the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston. That's another investor in the project, essentially. And so all of those names are people that care about this project and its success. And they don't care just about the day we open the doors or open the doors. They care about the project for years to follow. They are long-term investors. We have regular inspections from the state, and we have our own inspections that we do on a regular basis of every unit and every resident. And we have our own staff that maintains these buildings. And we are incentivized in every possible way to create safe, and high quality housing. From the time we build it to forever, it's ours and we care about it. I'm working on right now a building from the 70s, working on a 100-unit rehab. And that's like, we are there every step of the way and we are not going to leave anything behind. To touch on this kind of next slide, because this is another piece of the component is our residents and the costs. I'm showing here the number of units. We have a total of 50 units. 50% of the area median income, 60% or less. Here is showing their annual income for those demographics and then their maximum rents. So the reason I show this is to give you an idea of first who we're benefiting. I think a really good representation of this income, this 44,000, is then the hourly rate. If someone was worked 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, which is more than full time, I would say, that's how the hourly rate breaks down. And so when we talk about how much people make in living in these houses, we're talking about people that are making Social Security or maybe a small pension, and people that are most likely already in our community. And we're talking about people that have had a house for 20, 30 years, and it's now become too much for them to maintain. And they thought that their taxes were going to stay low, or that maybe that roof was going to last them another 15 years, and it just hasn't. And they're no longer to maintain things the way they thought they would. And now they're looking for somewhere to stay near their neighbors, not end up 2 hours away, and stay in their communities. And this is also a place for people to still have their own independence. They don't have to potentially work or live with their own children, or other situations like that. Also, this starting rate is very close to the starting rate for a teacher in Scarborough. So if you're a first or second year teacher, or say you just moved to the community and you're 55 years old and you wanted to start teaching or substituting, as a project, this is what we're talking about. Daycare workers, teachers, anyone who works in a restaurant. I don't know a lot of people making much more than 21 an hour at a restaurant. I don't know anyone making it at the McDonald's. But, so these are usually people that are already in our community, and all we're doing is allowing them to stay here, instead of displacing them or making them commute from an hour away to their job here. So if anything, potentially reducing the amount of driving people are having to do that work here already. The money component, there was one other item that I should touch on, and that's how do we make sure the money doesn't run out for the project? And the easiest way to explain it is the way these buildings are built and financed is that they are provided either subsidies up front and support along the way. Some of those subsidies up front come from Maine Housing and partners like towns with housing trust funds like here. The Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston is providing grants up front as well. Those grants then reduce the amount of debt that the project has to take on. And that debt is what drives the mortgage payment essentially for the project. So you take a lower mortgage, means that the building doesn't require as much in rent to pay that mortgage. And then on the flip side, the long-term support, that comes in the form of things like a TIF, the credit enhancement agreement. And so those are kind of the two prongs that a community can say, we want to support projects like this, and we want to maintain our residents here and provide a high quality of life. And so that TIF reduces our overall expenses over the lifetime of the project, at least the initial 30 years until our mortgage is expired or paid off. And so that the building can get built and we don't have to worry about hard times and having to increase rents or ask too much of our residents. So those are kind of the two ways that communities do that. Um, Here's a slide of some of the benefits of the project to the community. So what is this, what is the town helping pay for? You know, these are 50 potential residents already in Scarborough, they get to stay. This is a reinvestment on US Route 1's corridor, right in the middle of town, right by the marsh, a place that we should care about and want to improve and improve its infrastructure. We want to increase safety around US Route 1 and Payne Road and Dunstan Corner. This site is not going to impact the existing wetlands. We're going to treat the water before it leaves this site. So we're improving the quality of those wetlands. This will also, we have to think of when we construct this building, those grants and funds that we talk about, those come from federal sources. That's dollars that are not here in Maine, that are now coming to Maine form of dollars for construction, management, maintenance. When we build a building, then we have staff that maintains it. So if the upfront costs that we're getting, that's not here in Maine, and once the building's here, it's generating income and generating jobs here in Scarborough as well. So then when we talk about even when we talk about the credit enhancement agreement from a very basic level, when we talk about a new development inherently increases the value of a site. If you look at the site's existing tax bill, and then you add the new value of a project, the taxes would go up. Even the TIF and credit enhancement agreement that we're requesting, the project as a whole, the site as a whole will still generate more tax revenue for the city. Even on a very basic level, the net tax bill will be higher than it is now. So we're talking about, yes, the expenses will come with that tax bill of life safety. Luckily, we have a site nearby that we have excellent data from that already. There's a site across the street as well. Again, the fire department, life safety has looked at this site, said this is a safe site to visit, and this is a safe way to get out of the site. So yes, there are expenses that come with this, but we're also not paying our amount of schools, which is our biggest expense in the community. So it's a relatively small additional expense, but with a net gain in income from the site. So that's my big spiel.
Great, Ben, I really appreciate that. And
I hope I
I
covered
think
it.
that's,
And I'm sure.
That's super.
Can we get that presentation sent to us?
yeah, can you send that to Karen and then
Yeah.
Karen, we send that to the,
Absolutely.
Because I would like to be able to have that.
Yep.
that's super. Great, so thank you. We really appreciate the work you guys are doing and your commitment to the community and at this segment of population, I will just say that we appreciate housing for all people, not just people without children, people with children, regardless of the impact on the budget. So there is a proposed motion on the agenda. It would be great if somebody would make it.
Sorry. Splitting.
Okay. So there's a proposed motion on the agenda. Great if somebody could make that. And then in a second, we could discuss. And
Before we do a motion, just wanted to ask a quick question. Either one of you might be able to answer. I know that the town, I didn't have a chance to watch the meeting, but the town council voted it down unanimously.
So good clarification. So this is a different project.
Okay.
So essentially, the past projects and original applications that were submitted were for a contract zone. And so that vote from the town council was for a contract zone for that site, which would have been for a 60-unit building and 3 12-unit buildings of workforce housing. So they weren't voting on the credit enhancement agreement. They weren't voting on the Affordable Housing Alliance grant. They were just voting on changing the zoning for that site. So currently it's 3 zones. And so what we've done is we've gone back to the drawing board. We're building a building. We're proposing a site and a project that is by right on the site. So that means that it doesn't need to go in front of town council. Doesn't mean we're trying to avoid the town council. It just means that the site's already been decided by town council and
so this works within the existing zone.
within the existing zoning. So it only needs to go in front of the planning board. And so that means that the comprehensive plan and the current zoning. Those decisions were made by the taxpayers that put in town council that decided that years ago. So we're only required to go through the planning board.
Ben, just to be clear, this is one portion of what might have been called the old Marsh View development proposal. This is.
So I mean,
This is the
you-
the tax credit, what I call the tax credit portion,
yes.
the main housing
Say
portion.
that, Yeah,
Yeah.
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 It is a different building. It's a smaller building.
Yeah.
It's a different site,
It's single building.
single building, yep. So it's changed locations. A lot has changed. There's definitely a difference.
Sure.
But yeah,
Yeah, I just wanted to get that on the record before we did a motion to
yeah.
signify that this has changed dramatically since it's gone to council. So that we're not.
That would have been a
Just
great
voting.
discussion item. I mean. Say it again when we get into the discussion part. All right, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Oh, all right. Now, is there
forgot I
any
was
discussion?
out here, didn't you?
You ready? Any-
So what the motion is for our portion of this.
Yes, this motion is
Right,
about making a recommendation to town council to fund the $200,000.
we're not involved in what the planning board is doing,
That's
that's
right.
council and all
Yeah.
that stuff. This is just whether this qualifies, let's say, for what we do.
That's right. This is
What
whether
our
to
funds do.
recommend funding for the $200,000. Sorry. That's right.
Mr.
And I think
Chair,
comments that we need more than enough fund.
Yeah,
Yes.
$765,000, and so there would be 565,000 left after funding this.
Mr. Chair,
Madam Jean Marie,
if I may, I'm sorry, I've been listening and anyway, I support this. As anyone who knows me knows, I'm very much in favor of the development of more affordable places for folks to live. I think I'm really, as you probably know, I'm very disappointed that the workforce housing was taken out, but I want to emphasize for those who may be in the audience that this is a smaller development. It's for people 55 plus. In my business, there are a number of people 55 plus who don't have a place to move to because they can't afford it, but they can't afford to stay in their own homes either. So I think that the more opportunities that we can develop in this manner are important to us as a town and as a society, to be honest with you. I also want to thank South Portland Housing because I know they've done a fabulous job with Jocelyn Place. I was very, very impressed by that when I toured it. And I don't know, to me, how can you lose when you're leveraging money and you've got TIFs and CEAs and everything else? I know no one believes me when I say that, but it's true. So I'll be voting in support of this. Thank you.
thanks, Jean Marie. I want to just point out, there's one, this is about funding $200,000 from the trust fund. Similar to past recommendations that we made, there is a condition on this motion, which is, effectively that our recommendation expires if this application doesn't receive main housing funding within the next two funding rounds. And the idea behind that is, we don't want to have, one, we don't want to have this money just out there. And two, we don't want to have this money used just all by itself. Our intention is for it to be used alongside main housing tax credit money. And so
Good protection.
that's just protection of those funds with the.
I had a question for Ben. Do Scarborough residents who would qualify receive any advantage in getting in? I mean, there seems to be a desirable proposal for people looking for really good housing, but have limited funds. So
Yes.
people
it's-
people are going to ask.
Yeah, we've been given that question before. We were able to do that at Jocelyn Place. We were able to give that preference to current residents. Since then, though, Maine Human Rights does not allow a location-based preference to be included. So by law, because we use Minnesota Housing Authority funds, we're not able to give that preference anymore.
I do remember you having it on Jocelyn. I think they did the same thing with the property over here behind the old public safety building as well. There was preference given, but
Yeah,
now it's like.
yeah, it's no longer. No.
Well, and I mean, I'll just maybe say unnecessarily, it does seem like a silly thing to do. I mean, if somebody's gonna be moving from Scarborough to Scarborough, then somebody's leaving a place in Scarborough to presumably be occupied by somebody from outside of Scarborough, right? So, somebody from outside of Scarborough is gonna end up in Scarborough at some point. So,
Potentially.
right, so
It also could.
we're gonna get a new Scarborough person eventually, right?
Well, or family, as families age and grow, you
Right.
know, it's like they don't have to all live together.
Right,
That's the other piece to it.
The fact that we're doing it, if we did, would be some publicity that would be giving information and notification to Scarborough residents to a greater degree than, say, someone from Saco or Biddeford,
Yeah.
because they're further away, they're
You're
not.
likely to hear about it first
Yeah.
because you live in town.
So the
right?
advantage that people have is if they already live here, they're
Already
more
know.
likely to, and we as town council or this, you know, this committee would have the ability to publicize it.
People in Georgia aren't gonna know about this.
So-
Yeah.
You have a waiting list of,
So not for this building, but we do carry a waiting list, yeah.
and people that are on the waiting list, do you offer them the opportunity to come into this building?
We would publicize that this building is going to be built, and then we would open a waiting list for this building.
So you start from scratch, a fresh waiting list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we wouldn't just all of a sudden carry over our existing waiting list.
Yeah, good question.
I don't remember specifically what you had Jocelyn, waiting list on Jocelyn when.
So I can tell you at the beginning of this year, we closed and refreshed our waiting list, but we had over 1,000 different households on our waiting list.
No kidding.
So the people on the waiting list would have to sign on, let's say, to want to be into this building.
Yes,
Right.
anyone would, yeah.
So you don't just assume that's because somebody wants to live in Jocelyn, they want to live at the other end of the street.
Nope, it would be a fresh waiting list,
Yeah.
starting from scratch.
Yeah.
There would be several publications. We could even talk about that with this group on how we wanted to promote this project to the community.
Yeah.
Before that waiting list opens, so that locals have the best shot.
Yeah,
Out of that 1,000, how many would you say you meet the criteria for the age requirement here? Roughly, you know,
I couldn't, because our waiting lists involve larger families as well. It's just
I
because
just didn't know if you knew it was like 50% or 40.
I couldn't tell you. I know that I have another building that's gonna be opening in the next couple of months, and I think we've listed it for 2 months, and the waiting list is longer than the number of units we have already.
Wow.
Over 50 units.
We opened one in Gray a couple months ago and we had over 300
Oh my
within a week.
Wow.
Mostly from, right? You know,
We did open houses and were physically present in Gray, so most of the people came see it, so you have to figure they're at least within current commuting distance, whatever that means.
It's incredible.
When just to add to that too, right before our council meeting for when it was a workforce project. I jumped on Zillow, which is nowadays the most common place to look for rental housing.
Mm.
I did Scarborough. Found 50 apartments available and houses total.
Mm.
Available for rent. 1 bedrooms, the market average between those 50 apartments was 22,000 change for rent. Or sorry, 2,200. Sorry about that, yeah. Maybe.
next year.
So it's 2,200
Yeah.
in rent. That was not including utilities. When you look at our numbers, those subsidized rents, they include utilities, they include internet, they include parking. So you have to think of that number, you look at that subsidized number, that is everything to live. That's not
Yeah.
2,200 plus a $300 heating bill that month in December. It's that lower, at most 1,400
That amazes me that there were 50
Wow.
units available, especially with all the new builds being done at the
Yeah.
down. That really surprises me.
The saddest piece was the number of 3 bedrooms. When we looked at the
That's
course,
3 bedrooms.
there were 3.
Yeah.
There were 3 available to rent, and a lot of the comments in the past have been, well, people should be owning or things like that. It's not open. Move to a new community, you can't necessarily find a house to buy right away.
Yep.
So.
Well, the median sales price in Scarborough has been over 800,000 for a while, so. So go buy a house in Scarborough. I couldn't afford to
get a
buy a
down
house
payment.
in
Go
Scarborough.
get a down payment. All right, any other comments before we call the question? On this question?
Let's do it.
All right, let's go. All in favor of the motion, Bill's motion?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? None. Everybody's in favor. Great. Great. Thank you, everybody. Item 5.
Did you have any comments, public comment?
That's coming after.
Oh.
Yeah. We've got another discussion action about a project called Marshview Terrace. This is about a CEA request. Ben, we've got a proposed motion. I don't know if you've got any other presentation for us.
You're not gonna go through that again, are you?
I'll mention, yeah, we've got proposed motion, but before we get to that, our the Housing Alliance is asked by town council to provide feedback about, the housing elements of projects like these as it relates to housing projects, about the housing viability, whether it has financial stability as a housing project, whether there's a need for the housing, so on and so forth, and to give a recommendation to town council so that it can ultimately approve the CEA. Karen, maybe you could give a quick description of a CEA, what's expected of us.
Sure.
Well then,
That would help everyone.
hopefully
Okay.
somebody can move the motion. We can maybe get a second and then have a discussion.
Sure.
That'll be nice.
Right. So this is the first project being reviewed under the town council's new or revised credit enhancement agreement policy. Previously, housing projects did not fall under the credit enhancement agreement policy, and it was rewritten to really include housing projects. So it would have the same scrutiny that a economic development project would have. The only difference between the economic development project and the housing project is the economic development project will go to SEDCO for a review before the council looks at it. Housing project at the same period of time obviously goes to the Housing Alliance. And what the CEA is asking you to do is give both the council and the council's finance committee feedback on the project, making sure it is viable in your analysis of financing for the project. It meets housing goals that you may have set up or that are in the comprehensive plan, and generally give them feedback in the realm of housing development. They're not, as Bob mentioned, they're not asking you to comment on traffic or all of these other things because the planning board's doing that. You are welcome to do that, but their feedback is really about housing and how it fits into housing policy. Once you've done that, that recommendation goes to the finance committee of the council, and they have a process that they go through, and they're looking at the housing project and how it fits into other goals of the town. So they're focusing on a bigger picture. And then once they look at the CEA draft, then they send a recommendation on to the council. So it gets reviewed several times. The next review of this, once you make a decision, will be at the finance committee on June 12th. They'll take a look at your recommendation and then start their discussion.
Right. Super. So there's a bunch of materials that came with our packets. And so why don't we do it like this? Let's do the motion, maybe a second, and then open up for discussion and then have a robust conversation with Ben. And then hopefully vote. Um,
So moved.
Bill, oh my God, thank you. You're full of emotions tonight. Is there a second?
Second,
Jean Marie, thank you. Great. Any discussion?
Yeah, what is the specific terms of this credit enhancement agreement?
If you
I
do-
read them, but
Yeah,
sure.
a 75% share of the tax revenues that they would, the total tax revenues that they would pay.
Well, Karen,
Uh,
it's the marginal tax revenue, right? It's not the total tax revenue?
Well, no, the total tax revenue at for the project, and Ben helped me out, it's in the table on page 4. So the total new taxes captured
Yep.
would be 69,700. This is all using the current tax rate. So given the value once constructed, 69,700 total taxes, and then the split of that would be 75%, which is 52,275 to support the housing project, and then 17,425 that the town would retain.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Karen, as I look at that table, the valuation that's listed is an increased assessed value, which
Right,
that's
this-
suggesting that's the amount of an increase.
correct. That's the only thing you can write a CEA for.
Right,
You can
so-
really focus on that.
Just to be clear, does that mean that the projected assessed value is actually higher than that?
A little bit
Yeah,
higher,
okay.
but they're tearing down the
Right.
the
okay.
building doesn't have value, so it would be the land, but this is on the increased value.
It's
of
only on the
taxes.
increased value. Okay.
Correct.
So essentially it becomes a $17,000 annual tax bill.
Well, that's coming to us.
Yeah.
We retain that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like any project, it has a value and it's assessed and pays taxes. This building will pay 17,000 annually.
Right.
Yeah.
And the reason it's so high is because there's a lot of value
Correct.
in the project. I mean, 17,000, you'd say, oh, that's $1 million house somewhere. I live at Higgins Beach and everything's $1 million house. And so everyone pays about $17,000 in taxes.
Yeah.
And they all gripe and say, that's a lot of money. Well, this is a lot of money.
Right. And again, just emphasizing, this is all at the current tax rate. So more than likely, the council will ask us to do the inflation over time. But essentially, it's going to wind up being the same amount of money because you're
Yeah.
just inflating the
Right.
figure and then matching it. But so
It's probably just taxed on the land right now. I mean, it's pretty much- It's
correct.
75, 25. Comment?
For 30 years.
I was going to say, I think that's typical. I believe the tax of the assessor did a list of all the different housing projects in
Yeah,
town.
so there've been 6 affordable housing CEAs. They're a little bit all over the map. What I remember is that we've done them based on what's needed for scoring for the main housing tax credit application. Which I think sort of ties into what my question was going to be for you, Ben, which is what do you need to score and how does this line up with that?
Yeah,
Or
so-
how many points does this get you and does that matter?
Yeah, so I can go in great detail or a little.
How about
Right,
medium?
start
How about
medium.
medium
Right,
detail?
fine, medium.
Yeah.
And it is on page
Yeah.
5 of their application, so you
Yeah.
can follow along a little bit with that.
Yeah, so essentially, low-income housing tax credits are very competitive. Each round, that the competition is opened. There's a scoring system based off of how well qualified the property project is. That could be based off of the amenities nearby, the walkability, the type of building, the amount of assistance from the community in the form of a credit enhancement agreement, the amount of subsidy used. And the way that shakes down to is a super competitive process where 2 points can be the separation of one of 6 different projects, only one of them getting funded. Just 2 points makes all the difference. Um, so a TIF and credit enhancement agreement, the one that we've requested, is the most possible points. That is for the TIF, you can only get a maximum of 3 points. We've proposed a credit enhancement agreement for the full 3 points. And so that's
So this is what it takes to get 3 points.
This is what it
Okay,
takes to
all right.
get 3 points, the maximum they
Yeah.
give it.
Yeah, great.
And how much, is that a big deal in the scoring?
Yes, and so what I was trying to say is 2 points was the difference between one project and 5 other projects
Yeah.
not getting funded.
Okay,
So
Yeah.
it's
Familiar with one of them.
it's hyper competitive.
Yeah,
Every point matters.
great, good question.
and you asked the question about. Generally speaking, when we've done these, have they fallen in this 75-25?
Yeah, there was, well, I'll say way back in the day, it was 100%, not to give you any ideas, man. But for 30 years, there was another one, there was 100% for 30 years. And then there was a couple 75s for 20, a 50 for 17, a 50 for 15. And all of that discussion, as I recall, was centered around what do you need for points? And I remember really it being let's thread the needle to kind of
Yeah.
get the points you need.
Even it's gotten drastically more competitive.
Yeah.
On a yearly basis.
And what I remember from some of those past discussions was it was less about the kind of financial feasibility of the deal and more about the point scoring, point scoring of the app.
So you're 75,000, you're 75% and. The 30 years is what gets you the 3 points.
That is the control, yes.
And you can't get 3 points with any other combination.
No, there's no other substitute other than the credit enhancement.
And you can't have a different,
No,
like,
we
you
couldn't
couldn't do
80%
like,
for
you couldn't do
15.
20 years at 76%.
No, those are both
Yeah,
thresholds
that's
for that tier.
it's as cheap as we can get off and still get you like 3 points.
Actually, yeah.
So if you went to 20, you'd probably be looking at more like 2 points.
Alright. All right,
Do you want to move the question?
any other comments or questions? And you've talked about the need for housing. There's a need for housing in town, apparently.
Yes.
Comprehensive plan, did you just touch on that briefly, how this aligns with that?
Yeah, a lot of the comprehensive plan touches on growth in this area, of the town, and we're aligning with that with abiding by current zoning. We feel, and there's also a good note on the need for affordable housing in this lower demographic and aging population in Maine. So I feel that it perfectly aligns with that. So that I also included in the checklist in the credit enhancement agreement, but yeah,
Right, and you will send that presentation to Karen so she can send it to us.
it should be.
Sure, okay,
Sure. And just for the record, there's a list of things that were required to be submitted in the preliminary application.
And did they submit them
they
all?
submitted
All
them.
right, great. Super,
Checked all the boxes.
great. All right,
This most equates to, and it's different projects because one was commercial, one's residential. But if you look at the old flea market that was redesigned into the sports place and the
Oh, yeah.
restaurant now,
Mm.
it had the same type of detrimental effect to the town as far as appearance and
Yeah.
visualization and stuff. So this is really a good way to take another eyesore
yeah,
and make it
Absolutely.
something that will actually enhance the town
Yeah.
as well.
another former flea market.
Yes,
Yeah.
because there are elements of Route 1 that just need to be
Yeah,
upgraded
yeah,
for the benefit of the community, just so what people think about Scarborough, we got all this
Yeah.
marsh and
yeah,
here's an
Spruce it up.
opportunity to have a high quality new building.
Yep.
I'd like to touch on also, this is a public investment in the project. The project's also doing its own investments in the public infrastructure. There are other things that we're paying for, like impact fees, that are significant. And traffic impact fees, for example, is one of them. Those pay for bonds for the current improvements that have already been made.
Hmm.
So this project's paying for new infrastructure and infrastructure that residents are already benefiting from by paying down those bonds. That's the traffic impact, for example, but there's others like sewer impact and other things, so. This is a piece, we bring all the pieces to it as well.
I appreciate that. All right. Looking around, Jean Marie, not hearing any more questions from you, so I will call the question.
Hey,
Unless you object.
I just undid my audio. No, I don't have any more questions. I
All
like
right, without objection, I will call the question. All in favor?
I
Aye. Aye. Great. Any opposed? Anybody voting present? Great. It's all to 0. Great. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Ben, for that great presentation. Sorry for mispronouncing your last name earlier.
Good job, Ben.
Good job.
It's a good
It's a
project
great project. Yeah, we really,
for a space that will benefit from it.
yeah, it's great.
It's smart.
Yeah. Item 6 is a discussion about our housing workshop with town council. It's late. And still got 2 items left on the agenda. What I'd like to ask, unless anybody wants to take a different tack with this, is that folks take a look at what's in the packet related to this. It's a great job that Karen did putting together these slides and these thoughts.
I have it.
And after sending her emails full of compliments and glee, also just send her your thoughts. If you
Okay,
have any, and I think that will be helpful, but
I like how you're moving this
I
along.
think that, I mean, unless somebody has some burning
No,
thoughts to talk about now.
My first cut at it, Karen, it's really good.
Good, good, good.
You think this is something we can build on too? Does it give you something that you can like revise and bring everybody forward?
Absolutely, and I think that's why we're wanted to call it like
That's why there's a
This is
date on
a
it.
the state of housing in 2025, and I think we can continue to do this. It really makes sense. Right.
that's good.
Yeah, if Bill and Jean Marie, you're both counselors or former counselors, so hopefully this would be useful to you as
Absolutely.
on there.
yeah,
Absolutely.
I think it's a great presentation. Most people have no clue about what's going on in the real estate market, to be honest with you. So
Great. All right, so please send Karen compliments, send Karen ideas. By Friday,
morning.
so there's a deadline. So by midnight on Thursday,
There you go.
get her all your.
okay,
I said it's only fair. I sent this to
Right.
you guys at like midnight yesterday.
Yeah, so get it back by midnight tomorrow, right? Pressure.
Good job, Karen.
All right, and now, let me just, we've got new guests, Eric. We've got Jennifer Waters and Marvin Gates now. And Tracy's gone. So now we're on to item 7 on our agenda, which is public comment.
Let's start in the room.
We'll start in the room. Mr. Hayes,
Well,
thank you for your patience.
yeah, thank you. I guess at this point, my comments are not worth much. You folks have decided. I will comment, and I find it interesting that your published agenda predetermined what you were going to do here.
Mhm.
Which might well, this looks like a theater. You already decided you approved it, so I don't understand what this meeting was really about.
Hmm.
I am against the project, if this gentleman knows. You can always build a case to support the end result you want to get to. I disagree with a lot of the comments that have been made and been accepted by it. It is a traffic hazard. That cutout entrance and exit to that property is dangerous. I suspect some people here have heard the old statement that, there goes an accident looking for a place to happen. I can show you the place that's gonna happen, right there.
Mhm.
gentleman is right, the housing across the street does have they try to direct the traffic southbound. I live just beyond there. I witness all the time people coming out the directed southbound exit and turning left on the Route 1. It's gonna happen there. The business that is some kind of medical establishment that is just down the road.
Mm.
They have a horseshoe driveway. A lady has spoken at both the planning board and council before the council at the last meeting. And and I won't speak for her, but I'll repeat what she said. Her concerns are her driveway's gonna come the U-turn for everybody coming out of
Mm.
and making the right-hand turn. I disagree strongly that there are only going to be 13 prime time movements. Most people, if you qualify at 55, and if most of the residents are, let's say, 55 and 60, I believe most of those people in today's economy are going to be still working. Which means a lot more than 13 people are going to be leaving that facility. I would suspect somewhere between 6:30 and 8:30 in the morning. They make reference to, and this is kind of a small thing, that there's a nearby grocery store. And on the Vine is a great little store. But I can tell you that people with that kind of income are not going to be able to afford to go into that store and do their weekly grocery shop.
Mm.
They have great stuff, their meats are fabulous.
Yeah.
But I don't believe that people are gonna be doing their full week's shopping on the Vine. I love the store, I support it. But I don't do my weekly shopping.
Mhm.
They talk about adding buttons to facilitate the people crossing maneuver and walking. All that's going to do is back up traffic that is already backed up. So if you've got people who are walking and want to cross the street, all that's going to do is tick off drivers who now in Route 1 traffic is interesting. I left my house this afternoon and dropped my car off at Oak Hill at the gas station. And I was 2 lights getting off Broad Turn Road onto Route 1. And the traffic was unbelievable from all the way from Dunstan to Oak Hill.
Mm.
People coming south, which would amount to a left-hand turn in. You are not going to have everybody coming south and decide, well, I'll go over Milliken Mills Road, or I'll go over Haggis Parkway and down. That's an idealistic dream. But as I said, I understand when you are looking for all the pluses, that's all you point out.
Mm.
There are, for every plus, I think there are 2 minuses for that location. I understand the need for housing. It concerns me that, again, the taxpayers of Scarborough are asking to help finance a project that may not benefit Scarborough residents. As the gentleman said, he can't give any preference to a Scarborough person to move into that building. I believe someone asked for how many Scarborough people were in Jocelyn Place, and I'm told that person was told that information can't be divulged.
I'll tell you right now, my property management team is working on it right now. So I can tell you. Just don't have the number right now.
Well, it's in the reference made, it isn't local taxes, the federal government, even though they're broke, still gets tax money. So whether the money comes from your, you know, if you've got $10 and you get $5 in your front two pockets, you still have $10. And that's tax money is at all levels of government operate with tax money. Whether there's no benefit to me for somebody saying it isn't, you know, being financed by other than local tax money. Where's the federal government get their money? So, again, I'm against the project. You folks are solidly behind it. That's it.
Super. Well, I appreciate your comments and thank you. And I'll,
Can I just?
can I just, go ahead.
It does really bother that you publish an agenda, and it's been, I looked it up, I mean, I looked on the calendar on the website, so it's been there for a week. That you recommend what you had this meeting to approve, which.
Yeah, can I address that to you? Sure. Anybody? I have been on this alliance for, well, a lot of years, and I don't know how many, and early in those years, there was an issue in town that turned into a pretty big, nasty political issue. And one of the reasons for that issue turning into a pretty big, nasty political issue is because a town councilor drafted a motion to vote on the fly, with an index card and a pen without putting too much thought into it. So from that time forward, I developed the practice of trying to write out the motions in advance. And in the case here, that's what I did. So that we knew what we would be voting on. And when we take a vote, we vote on something specific. We vote on whether we agree with what the motion is or not. And something is just as likely to be voted in favor as it is voted out of favor. So, while, you know, I can understand that the word recommend might throw things for a loop for you, it is really meant to be a precise set of wording for us all to, have something so that we don't, have something thoughtless that we're talking about and something that's important to vote on. And, it's developed through that practice. But I can appreciate your perspective in saying that it looks like it's a fait accompli 3 weeks before a meeting takes place. And I can appreciate that perspective.
Brian, I will also remind us that at the last 30th, we had a discussion, made a motion that the Alliance endorses the funding, and that a final detailed written motion will be provided at the next meeting for a formal vote.
And we do want to say all comment, this is public comment, so that
Okay.
will go forward with their recommendation. Their recommendation, process-wise, is a recommendation to, from the housing perspective, they approve the Housing Alliance approves the project, but it goes to the Finance Committee for their review now.
Karen, is that your nice way of saying that what we do doesn't matter here? No, all right, so,
Just
yeah,
a recommendation.
it's just a record.
And the comment will go,
Yeah.
so your comments will go
Yeah.
to, along, to the Finance
Along
Committee
with, well,
with the approval.
So it had to go to the counselor.
oh, no, this is a recommendation to council for their action, which is the thing.
His statement was that this project doesn't require it to go to the council.
So
The
I
way it
want
was
to add some light to this is, so one thing, the packet that I just handed you that Karen's been working on, the educational loan on affordable housing, there are a lot of different components to this project. And so it's not like one big application for all of these things at once. There are multiple applications. So we have a single application for the grants. We have a single application, the credit enhancement agreement. Those are the two separate things that we voted on here. Then we have a site plan application. So each one of those approvals are mutually exclusive. They go to different, relatively speaking.
Yeah,
So
so
they go to
the grant needs to go to council to be approved. The CEA needs to go to council to be approved. when I think, Ben, when you were saying was that a zoning change is no longer part of this.
Right.
And so that part doesn't need to go.
So, and just to finish, like, with the, with the site plan application, that's what's gonna go to your planning board. And that's where you have to look at each one of these applications with a different lens. So the grant was with a lens from the Affordable Housing Alliance on whether it was a good housing project in terms of the finances of the project and the benefit to the community with the Housing Trust Fund funds. So they have a role to judge off of that program. And then the credit enhancement agreement is a different lens. How does the project benefit from a tax standpoint and a benefit to the community? And then the planning board will then judge based off of traffic. It's what the site looks like, parking, EV chargers, all of those types of items. So sewer impacts, wetlands, all of those. So there are excellent places, like you had some excellent comments, traffic, and concerns about road safety. The planning board is the best place for those comments, because that's what they're educated and trained on hearing and interpreting. Whereas the Affordable Housing Alliance is focused on
Like, you know, I
different funding. Yeah, sure you will.
Right.
Again, like,
Yeah.
also, I've talked to you several times after meetings. My door's still open and my email is open.
so let's be
You can
correct.
talk to me later.
You listened to me after one meeting, that's the only couple. You have several.
So I love the dialogue that you guys are having and
Yeah,
appreciate your friendship that you're building. We've got 3 other guests and I don't know if any of them want to talk, but if they do, this is the time to do it.
Got one.
And then,
One thing I just wanted to quickly address from a comment that the citizen made. My question to you early on when you were going over everything was, are you proposing a new median? And I wanted to know, you said that it's gonna be an additional median going down there further.
Mhm.
Is that gonna go past Mend to
No,
take care of what their concerns are?
no, it's only partially in front of our property. And it's actually ended early. So that DOT has the ability to make their left-hand turn in emergency situation.
The DOT route going down there,
Yeah.
that's why we couldn't put it further down.
so we've got
I
somebody
just
who
wanted to
wants
address that.
Right. Unfortunately, I see a hand up, but it's not by a speaker, so someone wave their,
Oh, it was probably one of the people early on who. raised their
Oh, I
hand
see.
To show that they could hear us.
all right.
We could just allow everybody to talk and say, right?
Let's see if
we're gonna let Marvin-
let's let Marvin talk if he wants to talk. Oh, or maybe Debbie.
Sorry, whoops. All right,
Just go next.
really. Asked to-
Debbie, here we go. Debbie Gates, would you like to talk or make a public comment?
Okay,
Let's keep going.
let's go to Marvin.
Alright, Marvin Gates. Yeah,
You have to allow them to, okay.
Yes.
there.
Oh, there's Debbie.
There's Marvin. All right, Marvin.
Can
Go
you hear?
ahead. We can hear you.
I signed on late just for your edification. Anybody watching closely, I was listening. Debbie is my wife. I was listening on her feed. So I heard the conversation. I just got to my own computer for comments. Thanks very much. Really appreciate the clarification of the first public commenter and that pause. I think I understand the process now going forward. And therefore won't speak to the project generally. That can be spoken to at the planning board at this stage. Regarding the $200,000 grant or grant rather, I respect your decision. Appreciate it being tied the way you've tied it, and as it's been pointed out to me, that money is there for you to dispense towards projects that you appreciate, and obviously a unanimous decision means that you appreciate this project, and I respect that. Regarding item 5, the CEA request motion that also passed unanimously, I listened closely to that, and I understand the legalities that Scarborough residents cannot benefit directly. I got lost in the weeds a little bit about waiting list notifications, and that's where, you know, that's where the devil lies here. I feel strongly that Scarborough taxpayers should not be funding that which Scarborough residents don't benefit from directly. And I understand the laws in place that it can't happen the way it happened at Jocelyn Place. But I would very strongly request that the Alliance speak to the council or whoever has authority over the town's attorney and really flesh out what can be done and not done for the sake of Scarborough residents who may qualify for this, and to have it be a great deal more public than what I heard tonight, which is, you know, perhaps, and, you know, I'm not saying this is what anybody said, this is what I heard. Perhaps there can be some notification of a waiting list that Scarborough would hear about because nobody in Georgia is going to hear about this. Kind of thing. I'd really like to hear the legal opinion on whether or not Scarborough residents have a dog in the fight of benefiting here or not, and whether Scarborough residents are being asked, in other words, to support a Maine initiative or a Southern Maine initiative in housing. And I heard former councilor Katerina say very well, this is the right thing to do. Again, I don't mean to put words into the former councilor's mouth, but I get that. But I'd like to see it benefit Scarborough residents who are paying for it directly or as directly as possible. And I think that's a question for the town's attorney. So when this comes to the council, I'd like to know that that has been done. So then the council can proceed more directly. And finally, the most important thing I have to say, and I appreciate all the time you're giving to me, regards the workshop. And, you know, I've tuned into the last meeting, your last meetings, even commented. I've been in touch, tuned into planning board and tuned into council meetings and have commented. Comments, I think, are important. And as you proved tonight, the public comments after the deed is done, kind of thing. And workshops I've been a part of and been in attendance to oftentimes, and more than 9 times out of 10, 99 out of 100, the public doesn't have a seat at the table. So it is listening to those of you who deserve to be listened to from on high, and then we're given the ability to make a comment during general public comment after the workshop is done and sort of after everything has already been said and done. And I would say even after, in usual cases, those who participated in the workshop, in your case, the Housing Alliance, have already gone home. So unless they listen to the recording later, they don't benefit from the public's comment. So if you have any influence over the council, and I believe you do, I would ask you to please find some time during the hour and a half when the public in attendance will be able to make their voices known. And I think that's clear, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Did Jennifer have anything she wanted to add?
I promoted her, so she can
Alright.
speak as she would like.
Hi, can anyone hear me?
We can all hear you. Yeah.
Hi, good evening. I definitely, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I've been a Scarborough resident for 15 years. I grew up in Freeport. I'm now 45. I work at Scarborough Dental in town. Can definitely say the traffic on Route 1, and I guess this will be a planning board comment, but has made it very difficult to pull out of there. So I would say, I know it's in a different part of town, but just the Route 1 traffic is growing tremendously, and I've seen it grow over the 10 years that I've been working there. And also, just as a resident, I really fear for my child in the growing town, the way the town is growing. And I know that's a separate issue. However, I just feel as though when I drive around Scarborough, I see more housing and more banks. We all laugh about it on the Facebook moms page, but you know, I would really, I'm very seriously wondering, can we put a moratorium on building in general? Where would I direct that question? I just, as a Scarborough resident, I just kind of feel forgotten about with what we need, what our family needs, and what I've heard other moms my age kind of saying here. And I realize this is a 55 plus topic, that we're 55 plus housing development that we're talking about. But again, it's more traffic, it's more building for houses. I feel like sometimes Scarborough doesn't know what one hand is doing before the other. I just would really appreciate more thought on infrastructure. And again, I realize that's a planning board issue, but any thoughts on a moratorium, or am I just out in left field as a resident?
Well, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the comments, Jennifer. We appreciate it. And yeah, thank you.
The council.
No, wait,
Yeah.
it is, great. I think that is it. We've got no more public and one more item on the agenda.
I'm gonna go.
Do you want to take the last item on the agenda, Bill?
No, I'm gonna.
Seriously,
Adjourn.
it's a layup.
Oh.
Yeah.
This is me.
Yes.
All right.
On you go.
So moved. Great. All right. Thank you.
Do we need a vote?
All in favor of
Aye.
adjourning?
Aye.
Thank you. Richard, that